Hi, welcome to my mini lesson and overview of the TI-89 calculator. This is for the purposes of Math 80 and how we will be using it for this course, some of the basic functions, and just to make it feel a little less intimidating, give you a little bit of an orientation to what might be kind of an intimidating calculator at first glance especially. So I'm going to pause this for just a moment and switch over to the screen to show you the calculator. So here's the TI-89 titanium, but it's the same pretty much, not exactly, but pretty much the same as the TI-89 without titanium after. Titanium has a few more shortcuts and a few more abilities, but really behaves pretty much the same for the purposes of this orientation and most of the course. So the important thing is, well, how do you turn it on? So hit on in the lower left, and in between these bars is your screen that you're kind of currently working in, the calculation you're doing at the moment. All right, so down here we have just the normal numeric keypad that you're probably familiar with from a four-function calculator, and of course the typical four-function operations, division, multiplication, subtraction, addition, and this will be enter is like equal sign. One thing that makes this obviously more intimidating is all these other buttons, the bigger screen, and all this text above all of the buttons, and how do you access that, and what are these F buttons? At least that's how I felt. So let's just talk about the basics to start. So once you're turned on, as I said, this is your entering. So if I want to do like 8 times 6, you just enter it like you'd expect. What you entered, it goes here, and what the answer is on the right side. And then you can see that the same problem is right there. So if you want to edit it, you can just hit the right arrow, hit the back symbol here, or delete or insert. You'll learn how to use the blue and the green later, and that'll kind of like a computer do a backspace, just like the arrow on my laptop has backspace written above it. So I can like say, oh no, I really want to do 8 times 7 now. If you want to do a totally different problem, the whole thing is selected, and so if you can just overwrite it by just typing in, so like 7 minus 9, and you'll get -2. Okay, so let's do 5 divided by 10. So how many times does 10 go into 5? Well, that's a half a time. And unlike what you're familiar with from scientific calculators or four-function calculators, or even the 84 or 83 graphing calculators, is it's going to give it to you in reduced fraction form automatically. That is, unless your mode is set differently. So in the mode, you can change it to where it says exact approximate. I know it's a little bit small and blurry. Let's see if I can't get this a little bit easier to see. Exact and approximate. Don't think that's any better. Exact and approximate, normally it's set to auto. You can see that arrow there means that there's more, and if you hit the right arrow, it'll open up a menu where you can do that you always want it to be exact, or you want it to always be approximate. Generally speaking, we do want it to be on auto, especially when you're at this level of courses. You really want it to do it exact, unless obviously the auto kind of does whatever is most appropriate, generally exact. So if we keep it on auto and we wanted to, let's get out of here, we're going to hit the escape button, the ESC escape button right here. If I wanted to do this in the auto, but manually say, no, I really want the decimal for this particular calculation, you don't have to change it in that menu where you can make it say approximate. You can also hit the diamond, the green button, the diamond button, and the enter, because in green is the squiggly equal, meaning approximate. So if I hit the diamond and the enter, it will take that answer and convert it to a decimal. All right, so that's how you can convert between the fraction and decimal. You can also hit second and the number 5 to get the math menu. On the 83 and 84's math menu is here, and I talked about that in the other video for those of you using the 83 or 84. Second math brings up a window where you can go into number or probability. Those are the two places we'll be mostly using in this course. If you go into number and you hit the right arrow to open up that submenu, you can see that it has a button for exact. So you can also, you say you want the exact of something there. And there's a bunch of other things, including a root as part of that window. But it doesn't have the exact same window as you might be comfortable or familiar with from if you have used 83 or 84. Again, the escape button will get you out of the window or menu. And so that diamond and the enter is a nice way of converting to an exact. Again, mode allows you to control that as well. So let's do a few more things with just arithmetic. Let's do 8 times 5. What I wanted to mention is when I was typing it in, let me zoom in a bit more. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to see. There's an asterisk, that star looking shape here, but here it converts it to the pretty math that we use generally later on, the dot, 5 times 8. Not a decimal point, but a dot higher up for multiplication. All right. Couple other buttons to be familiar with for just basic arithmetic stuff with the calculator. You've got parentheses here, and unlike the 84, there's going to be more of a need to end your parentheses on stuff, because the 84 and 83 just kind of assume there's a an end, but here you actually have to literally put it in. So if I wanted to do something like the square root, yeah, let's do square root. So square root, there is a button for it. It's in blue here. So to access anything in blue, you have to hit the second button first. So I'm going to hit second, and you can actually see it says second right there. And then I'm going to hit that times button, and it'll bring up the square root function, and you say what you want to take the square root of. So let's say I want the square root of 49. The 83 and 84, you could just hit enter, but here it's going to say missing the end parenthesis. So you can hit escape to cancel that error notice, and you can add it in. So got to end your parentheses. Once you do that and you hit enter, it will evaluate. The square root of 49 is 7. So there's the square root button. It's a little bit differently placed than you might be used to on scientific calculators or even the 83 or 84. I've had a student, since I'm just noticing this, have an issue with the brightness and contrast of their screen. It was like really, really dark. And so this allows you to change it. So you use the green diamond button and either the minus or the plus to adjust the brightness. So you can see there and there. That's like a decent spot for right now. You can clear or just type over your working bar right here. So we talked about square root. What about squaring? So even though squaring is very typical, they don't actually have a button for squaring right on the 89. To do any power, any exponent, you're going to hit the caret symbol. That's that kind of hat-looking shaped one, called hat in statistics. And it's caret, which is also on the number 6 keypad on a computer. You just hit Shift 6 to get the caret. Here's the keyboard. I don't know if you can really see it very well. Let's see, where are we? Here we go. Here's the caret on number 6, right there. So you'd hit Shift there. So for maybe, let's do 5 squared, you'd hit 5, caret 2. And you can see it shows it with the symbol you used, but here it does it in a nice, pretty math type script, 5 squared. If you want a whole quantity to go up in the parentheses, then you need to put parentheses around it. That's more like when you're doing functions and you're graphing things, where you have an X also. So there's the power button or exponent button. So I could do 6 to the 3rd power, or I could do 81 to the 720th power, and it says infinity because it's just so large your calculator can't even handle it. Let's try something a little bit smaller. Oops, maybe not that small. Do 1 to the 7th. You can see it's gotten bigger. Let's go a little bit bigger than that. Let's see, 53 to the 9th power. Let's try 74 to the 10th. Still can handle it pretty nicely. It's getting a little bit more full. Let's do the same 76. Let's do it to like the 15th power. Okay, so you see how you've run out of spaces. You can hit up and you can scroll over. That's what that arrow right here is telling you, that there's more, and you just have to go into the answer by hitting the up, and then you can scroll across. All right, so that is powers and square root. And the mode we talked about briefly, but I do want to just kind of make sure we have a good mode for this course. So function, main, floating. You can float, just regular old float is probably the best. Radian is fine. Radian versus degree is good for geometry and trigonometry courses and pre-calc and etc., where you're using angles. They're either in degree or radian measures. Normal's fine for that. We're going to be dealing with real numbers for the most part. We don't have to worry about vectors. Pretty print, that's the one where it made it look like it was a square, like an exponent up higher, and not having the caret symbol when you actually hit enter. So that's nice. You don't need to do any split screens. Most of the stuff stays the way it's automatically comes to you as. Okay, again, exact, approximate, just do auto. Base, all these should just be their standard thing. All right. Apps desktop, you can either have that on or off, and what that does is it controls whether when you open, okay, to escape, to open, whether you have this kind of window, that's the apps, or whether when you turn on your calculator, it automatically goes to this, and then you can just hit apps if you ever need one of these other apps. So again, home is another important button, especially if you don't have it in the mode set to go here automatically, because most of what we're doing, you're going to want to just be in this normal calculating mode. All right, so couple other things that is new on or different on the 89 to maybe other graphing calculators, or definitely to scientific, is that there's those green buttons and the blue buttons. And so those you access by using either the blue or the green button up there. So few other things. Talked about home, we talked about mode. Catalog gives you a list of all the different functions. So if you forget how to access something, you could potentially search through there and find it. Escape is really important. Backspace, clear, and this is to move around, up, down, within this format, also along graphs. So I'm going to hit F1, and you'll notice up here, this was a hard thing for me at first, was these function buttons here. F1 corresponds to the F1, F2 to this F2, and it changes depending on what part of the calculator you're accessing. So this one says F1 is tools, so if I do that, I can clear that whole home screen so that I don't have as much in there by hitting 8 or just scrolling down to 8 and hitting enter, so you can see it clear to that. You can hit algebra and get to some of the same things that we talked about before, like you can see approximate, so you can approximate things, lots of other features that we're not going to go into, calculate, lots of calculus features here in the 89 that you wouldn't have in the other calculators. That's why the 89 is more the calculus one, is it can do a lot of things that the 84 and 83 cannot do in the algebra and in the calculate or calculus screen. Sorry, that's calculus screen. You can clean up, but you really won't use these F buttons too much from the main screen, other than maybe if you want to clear your home. But they will come up on other screens and be more helpful and useful for things we're going to do in this course. All right, so then here you have some variables. They're separated into different buttons, unlike the 84, which kind of, it shared one button. What I mean by that is here's the 83, 84, it was shared. And here they split things up. You've got parentheses, comma, and brackets will be used. If you're doing matrices, you can use those things. The semicolon is also used if you're dealing with matrices. There's also a matrice app that you could use. Let's see. Square root we talked about. Okay, the negative. Okay, so now I want to talk about the graphing capabilities of this calculator. So those are up here just like they were on the 84, but this is kind of like the F buttons are where these used to be on the 84, and then above it was some other things. So you'll see that you're going to have to use the function numbers to access those other things. So let's go ahead and try to enter an equation. So to graph. So we're going to hit the diamond and the F1 to get the y equals, because it's in green there. So now I've got these two things that I've typed in before, and I'm going to delete those. So I'm just going to go up, select it, hit clear, go down, clear. And you can see the check mark next to it means it's graphing it. You can uncheck and check by hitting F4. So instead of deleting, I could also just uncheck it and then it wouldn't graph it, which is nice if you don't want to delete things, but you just don't want to use them for a current problem that you're working on. So let's go ahead and type in an equation for a line. Let's go ahead and do like 2x, so I'm going to use this x right here, minus 7. Once I hit enter, it'll push it up there and put it in more of the math notation that it likes. So to graph that, there is above here, above the F3 in green, you can see the word graph. So you're going to hit second graph. So these calculators kind of require an extra button to do a lot of the things that the 83 and 84 didn't require. But that's just so that it has a lot more capability. So that is the line, but it looks pretty funky right now. And your screen may look slightly different because we may have different windows. So the window controls the X, how far you're going in the X direction, the Y direction, and how much a tick mark measures. So if I want to adjust the window, I can hit the diamond F2 because that gets me the green window option. And you can see that it was going all the way to -250 and +250. And so that's definitely not a standard one. So to get a standard one, there's two ways to do that. And the main one is by this zoom. So hitting F2 will open up the zoom. F2 zoom, if you go to standard, this one, that will give you a standard window of -10 to 10 and -10 to 10 with every tick mark being 1. So now it looks a lot more comfortable and normal for you. You can see that the y-intercept is down here. What was the equation again? -7 and 2x. Okay, 2 for the slope. So let me go back to the graph. Second F3, diamond F3. So if I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There it is at -7 and going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, etc. There's the graph. That zoom is also accessible in this. So it was accessible from the window side of things, but it was also accessible from the graph. You hit F2 and the standard. This one, the square, what it does is it forces your screen not to be kind of elongated for your longer window. So -10 to 10, -10 to 10, they will all look like the scaling will all be equivalent. So let me just show you that because it's kind of a nice thing to see. So now, let me go y equals x. You don't need to do this. Y equals x. And graph. You can see that if you do zoom square, y equals x, this is the diagonal x equals y. Each of these x's and y's are equal, and you can see that it would be a square, like this length and this length are exactly equal. So this is actually, it shifted this to be much longer. So under window, you can see that. You can also manually change it. So I could say, well, I really only want to see that first quadrant. And so I want to see the axis. So maybe I'll go -2 in the x direction and go up to 10, counting by 1. And maybe I'll also go to negative. Let's do it a little bit different so you can see the difference. -5, and let's go to, I don't know, 20. And I'll count by 1s again. Okay, so 1 is kind of fine for our purposes. You really don't need to ever change it. So let's graph, set diamond F3 to graph. And you can now see that it is -2, there's 2 tick marks, all the way to 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, I think that was 10, and then it was -5 all the way to 20. And so there it is. And I will take out that y equals x because I don't need it. Let's go. Oops. Let's clear that. Okay, so let's add, actually let's do a little bit more with just one graph in there. So we can graph, and he'll say busy while it's working. Sometimes it takes a long time if it's a more complicated equation. So zoom, the other one I wanted to show you besides the standard is you can zoom in or out. You can see option 3 here is to zoom out. Option 2 is zoom in. Zoom fit is also very, very helpful when you have a function where you don't even have a clue as to how to, get it to show what you want it to show, or it's not even showing on your screen and you don't know what to. Zoom fit will make it fit your screen, and it makes it fit so that it goes through your endpoints of your screen. I mean, the diagonals of your screen, the corners of your screen, I guess I should say. So regardless of what view you have, what window you have, if you're able to see, let's say, the y-intercept and the x-intercept, so again, this was under Zoom Fit. If we're all there, so again, F2, Zoom Fit, so that we're all on the same page. Let's talk about how to determine the x and y intercepts. So I can go into the tools to open prior things. Zoom to trace allows you to go along here. That's F3. F4 regraphs it. F5 is math. Math is kind of like on the 83 and 84, the calculate button. Here it's going to do some math for you. And so unlike trace, where you're having trace, I'll hit enter and show you trace again, where you kind of jump between the pixels. And if I'm trying to find this, you can see that, you know, I'm in the negative for the y, and then I hit to the right and I'm above it. I never get exactly 0, so I'm not able to find the exact value of the x-intercept. So in order to get the exact, we're gonna have to use the math F5 button and say, I wanna find the 0. 0 is another word for x-intercept. It's basically when your y value is 0. And the sun seems to be setting. Let me just see if I can get some more light on here. There we go. So you follow the prompts. It says upper bound. I already did, sorry, I did one already. So lower bound at first. Let me go back so you can see the whole process. Escape. So F5, 0. You're going to go on the left side, the lower value, the lower end of things. And then you scroll over to the right side or the upper side of things. And then you hit enter and it will find the spot in the middle where the value is 0 for the y. So that's what a 0 is. It's basically another way of finding an x-intercept. So the x-intercept is at 3.5. Going to math window again, the F5 drop-down menu, we can find a value. So that allows you to plug in a particular x you want, such as 0. And by plugging in x is 0, you actually get the y-intercept. When x is 0, y is -7. All right, so that's the intercepts. And then if I hit math again, F5, I can also find other things such as minimums and maximums for other polynomials or intersections between multiple curves. All right, so let's say you wanted to figure out how to use these. We'll need a graph that, you know, intersects another one or a minimum or maximum. So let's go back to, let's get out of here. So escape gets you out of windows or menus. And if we go second y equals, we can add in a parabola. Let's just do like x, there's your variable x right here, squared, so to the power of 2, that's x squared. Let's do minus 6x plus 10. So when I hit graph, second and the F3, we may or may not see the parabola depending on really the window that you have going at the time. So this one doesn't seem to intersect, so maybe I should drop it down a little bit. So let's go ahead and just make a few adjustments to that equation. So second y equals, and instead of being plus 10, to edit, you actually, you can't use the right arrow like you can in the just the normal calculation screen. You're going to have to hit F3 where it says edit, and then it'll bring it down into your editing option. Hit to the right, just edit, backspace. Let's say, let's bring it down by doing, instead of plus 10, plus 2. Second graph. So graphing this, There we go. All right, beautiful. So let's go back to that math menu and do a minimum to see what the vertex is, the lowest place. So first you have to get on the right curve. So I'm going to want to be on the other one. So I'm going to hit the down arrow to get onto this one. Lower bound is like the left bound. It's the lower value, so it's on the left. Hit enter. Then you go to the right side of the minimum for the upper bound, hit enter, and then it will find the minimum value. So the minimum is at 3, -7. So that's the vertex. If I want to do the intersection, there's 2 of them. So I'm going to go second, oops, not second, my apologies. I'm going to hit F5 and go to intersection. And I'm going to be on the first curve. It doesn't really matter which one is first and second. It's just that if you had multiple, you would make sure you pick which 2 you're trying to find the intersection of. So first curve, and then a second curve, and then it says lower bound. So I'm going to go on the left and the right side for this intersection. So lower bound. So put a little marker. Keep going to the right with your arrows. When you're on the right side of the intersection, hit enter for the upper bound, and then it will calculate that one. If you're closer to here, if you did a left and a right bound around here, it would find this one. So again, it's an approximation, which is one of the beauties of the graphing calculator, is it's able to do these problems where they're not necessarily pretty numbers really quickly, much quicker than you trying to solve this problem by hand, which, by the way, this is the solution to the system of equations because it's where the 2 equations intersect. So let me do that again for this side just so you can see the process again. So F5, intersection. Okay, first curve is that one, second curve is that one. It doesn't really matter where you're at, but we need to go on the lower side or the left side of the intersection, this intersection over here on the left. So hit enter. Oops, I hit enter again too many times. So let me try that again. Intersection. First curve, sure. Second curve, sure. Go on the left side, anywhere on the left, anywhere on the right of that intersection, and there it is when you hit enter. So when you're finding things using the math menu, it's good to have a little bit of space to work around. That's one of the nice things about having control over the window and giving yourself a little bit more space to the right or left, below or above what you're searching for. All right, so those are a lot of the features. There's also the table, and the table will normally be from -3 to 3 or somewhere around there, but you can see I have different things in here because I have it set differently. So if you go to setup, F2, I have it set to ask for my calculus class, but if we change it to auto, then you can see that you can see where you want to start, -2, and you want to count by ones. And so this is probably the best thing for this course, is just to have it on auto. So that's under table setup. Hit enter to save as it indicates right here. So now you can see it's -2 and it just goes up by 1. So that was under the setup of the table. The other option is that you can actually do table set from this main button here. The diamond F4 button would also get you to that same screen. So again, it'd be nice to have it be auto. Let me get out of there. So you can scroll up and down the table set. If you had it as ask, what it's doing is, when I go back to the graph, so save, enter, you can type in any X value and it will find the corresponding Y value, or Y values if you have more than one function. So this allows you also to evaluate at certain things. Let's say you wanted to know what this is when X is 7. Well, then you can look at the Y2 part of your table and just go down to 7 or type in 7, depending on if you're on the auto or the ask. So then the Y2 value, when you plug in 7 into that parabola, the Y value is 9. I believe that's pretty much this. The only other thing I'll mention is this says y equals, so if you have an equation that's not y equals, you're going to have to convert it to be in that format. You're going to have to solve for y. So for example, if you had a line in standard form, ax plus by equals c form, you'd have to convert it to the slope-intercept form before entering it. Otherwise, again, there's the zoom and the tools and the edit by hitting F1, F2, F3. Just use the words underneath these F function and the corresponding F value to access them. And then the second on will turn your calculator off. One other thing I just thought I'd mention is this ANS button. So you can take the prior answer by hitting second, that, and then doing anything you want to it. And a couple other features in this calculator that you don't have on an 84 is kind of disguised or hidden that you're going to maybe make use of in this course, which you can get to from the catalog, but the shortcut is diamond 7 to get to a log. And you can say, well, you want the log of, I don't know, 30 and comma, right here's the comma, base 2, for example. And so it'll show log base 2 of 30. And if you want the decimal approximation, again, you hit the diamond and the approximately equal enter sign. So the diamond and enter gets you the approximation. And the other shortcut that you will want to make use of, because there's no log button on the 89 directly on the screen, another one that you will want to probably make use of in this course is hitting diamond 9. Diamond 9 gives you roots, and you can again do it with various bases. So I could take the cube root of, let's say, the cube root of 216. So you'd say 216 comma 3. So it's going to evaluate, and if you're doing it in the wrong order, you'll see it when it does it in the nice format. This is the cube root of 216 is 6. If you wanted it the other direction, then of course you would need to edit it and change the direction. So, if you make a mistake, you can always try a different way, play around with it a little bit. So I hope you found that tutorial helpful, and have a good day.